When looking at agricultural land, it's easy to see a single, indivisible object. You might assume whoever holds rights to that earth owns it absolutely. But under revenue law, a tenure holder, whether a bumidar or an Asami, does not possess an unconditional freehold title to the soil. Instead, their legal ownership is a disaggregated bundle of rights. It is a collection of specific, separable permissions, each tightly bound by statutory constraints. To accurately map this bundle, we have to build it from first principles. We will separate mere physical possession from the right to the fruits of labor, and then trace the exact legal procedure required to alter the land status entirely. Revenue law treats a landholding as a series of specific, separable permissions rather than a single physical object. The foundation of this architecture is lawful possession. In revenue jurisprudence, possession is a legally significant fact operating independently from ownership. The Revenue Code recognizes and protects this status even when it falls short of full transferable title. Take the position of an Asami. An Asami holds highly restricted, non-transferable rights. Yet because they hold lawful possession, the law protects them against arbitrary dispossession, even against a superior tenure holder. This makes possession the central axis of land disputes. All major administrative remedies, ejectment suits, injunctions, and mutation proceedings, pivot entirely on establishing exactly who holds, or is entitled to, lawful possession. Without securing this baseline of lawful possession, none of the subsequent rights to crops, trees, or improvements can be legally claimed or defended in court. Once possession is established, we can add the first distinct layer to the bundle, the right to crops. A tenure holder has the exclusive right to all crops grown on their holding through their own labor and investment. This creates a classic high-stakes exam scenario. If a tenure holder's legal right to the land is technically terminated mid-season, what exactly happens to the standing crops they already planted? This timeline illustrates the dispute. The law connects the sowing directly to the harvest, bypassing the exact moment of legal ejectment. Because of this unbroken link, the outgoing holder is generally entitled to re-enter the land, harvest, and remove the standing crop they sowed, even after their tenure has technically ended. There is a strict condition for this rule to apply. The outgoing holder must prove they were in lawful cultivation at the exact time the seed went into the ground. This mechanism is rooted in possessory equity. A cultivator who expends capital and labor should not lose the fruits of that labor over a technicality. This prevents the incoming holder, or the state, from achieving unjust enrichment at the outgoing cultivator's expense. The second layer of the bundle covers trees. While property law generally attaches fixtures to the earth, the Revenue Code explicitly bifurcates tree ownership based on their origin. This grid shows the two distinct categories of timber rights on an agricultural holding. For trees planted by the tenure holder themselves, the law grants full ownership. The holder has the right to fell, use, or sell the timber. This acts as a direct economic incentive for private afforestation. Conversely, for valuable pre-existing timber, or trees already standing on allotted Gram Saba land, the alate receives only the cultivation rights to the soil below. Ownership of the timber itself is strictly reserved for the state. Fruit-bearing trees operate on a slightly different logic. The right to the fruit, the usufruct, generally follows the person in lawful possession, remaining distinct from the ultimate ownership of the timber. Violating this origin system carries severe consequences. Unauthorized felling of state timber is penalized aggressively and is treated administratively as the misappropriation of Gram Panchayat property. This bifurcation strikes a calculated balance. It preserves the private incentive to improve the land while fulfilling the state's duty to protect existing valuable timber and environmental resources. The third layer of the bundle accounts for permanent modifications to the land. When a tenure holder constructs irrigation wells, embankments, or levels the earth, these improvements belong entirely to them. These modifications carry a dual legal impact. First, a well-irrigated plot may trigger a higher revenue assessment. Second, if the holding is ever acquired by the state, the unexhausted value of those improvements becomes legally compensable to the holder. A holding also relies on external dependencies. Rights of way, water access, and structural support over adjoining land are necessary for the beneficial enjoyment of the property. These are easements. While they are primarily governed by the general provisions of the Indian Easements Act, they are incidentally recognized and protected under revenue law whenever disputes directly affect holding boundaries or critical access. By establishing lawful possession, securing the right to crops, bifurcating tree ownership, and protecting both improvements and easements, the baseline legal architecture of an agricultural holding is complete. The legal framework for tenure starts with a strict presumption. Land held by a bumidar is intended for agricultural use. Diverting this land for commercial, industrial, or residential purposes is not an inherent right of ownership. Doing so unilaterally is a violation that attracts penal consequences. To legally change the land's purpose, the holder must pass through a statutory gateway. They must apply for and obtain a formal declaration of non-agricultural use from the competent authority, typically the subdivisional officer, or SDO. This flowchart tracks the rigorous administrative procedure required to secure that declaration. During the notice and inquiry phase, the authority does not just rubber stamp the request. They must verify the proposed conversion is consistent with local zoning laws and ensure that the irrigation and drainage of neighboring holdings will not be negatively affected. If approved, the process concludes with two mandatory final steps: the payment of prescribed conversion premiums and the official entry of the changed land use status into the Katauni records. The immediate legal effect of this entry is twofold. The land is legally released from the strict agricultural restriction, and its revenue assessment is generally enhanced to reflect its new, higher commercial value. This declaration expands the bumidar's ability to construct buildings or execute commercial leases. However, it does not erase the rest of the revenue code. Overarching restrictions, such as the bar on transferring land to non-SC/ST individuals, remain fully intact unless specifically lifted. In university exams, the grant of a declaration is frequently paired with its opposite. A complete legal understanding requires mastering the mechanics of cancellation. If a holder builds a structure before completing the formal declaration process, the construction constitutes an unauthorized diversion. This exposes the holder to immediate financial penalties and complex regularization proceedings. Even when a declaration is properly granted, it is not permanent. The code outlines 4 specific statutory grounds upon which the commercial status can be abruptly canceled. This checklist reveals how easily the non-agricultural status can be revoked. The first 2 grounds are operational failures. Cancellation is triggered if the declared commercial use is not commenced within the prescribed legal period, or if the land is used for an entirely different purpose than what was explicitly approved. The remaining 2 are administrative breaches. The status will be revoked if the initial declaration was obtained through fraud or misrepresentation, or if the revised premium simply goes unpaid. Firm, authoritative tone. Cancellation triggers statutory reversion, where the land returns to its previous agricultural classification and assessment in the revenue records. The punitive aftermath is swift. The holder becomes liable for heavy penalties for any unauthorized commercial use they pursued during the gap period, and any further non-agricultural use is legally barred without starting the entire application process over from scratch. The rights of a tenure holder form a regulated architecture that secures the fruits of a cultivator's labor while maintaining the state's authority over the land's legal use.